Good morning and welcome to a weekly edition of Account-Based Friday. We've been doing this for 3 years. My co-host Meg and I, we've done several hundred editions. Just as quick background, Meg, who's been a former CMO and also head of research at Serious Decisions, and we've been doing this for 3+ years. In the corner, you'll see a QR code, and that QR code brings you to all of our recordings on best practices around, we call it account-based, but really any go-to-market motion has been covered over the last 3 years. And today we've got a special guest joining us from Rhode Island, Anita Brearton, who's the founder of CabinetM, and super excited to welcome her back. You may remember back in, I think was it February, Anita, that we had you? I can't remember when it was.
Time ago.
Yeah, it was a while back. In fact, we had the same poll when we had you, and I figured rather than doing the exact same poll, maybe we could just kind of do a refresh on this one, and we'll give a proper introduction to Anita in a moment. But each week we start off with the poll, and so this poll was done a few months ago, and we're talking about Martech. When we were transitioning from 2023 to 2024, what were people experiencing? And I imagine if we do this poll at the beginning of the year in 2025, from my perspective, you'll be seeing a sharper decrease going into 2025 on Martech. But Meg, what's your opinion on how this is shaping up?
Yeah, I think I'm hearing a lot of people being very challenged by their CFOs, their CEOs on their investments for 2025, and really having to make a very strong case for why any new investment is going to really make an impact on the business. I think that's the thing that's changed the most. Is I and Anita, you'll be able to tell us better than anybody on this one, but what I'm hearing is you're not going to get a technology investment unless you can essentially guarantee or are willing to put yourself on the line to guarantee the financial impact that it's going to have. And in fact, existing investments aren't safe either. If you've got something that hasn't realized the promise that you were hoping it would, odds are you're going to get challenged on maintaining that investment. That at the same time, though, as we're hearing leadership look to marketing in particular to be adding AI and the productivity gains that are promised from AI. So it's kind of a, talking a bit out of both sides of our mouths, saying we can't make any new investments, but yet we're expected to deliver productivity and other gains from a new technology we probably don't have the way that we need just yet. So challenging times. But Anita, we're so lucky to have you joining us again. I've been impressed with CabinetM from the moment I met you and your co-founder, Cheryl. I think you've been really bringing something important to the B2B tech conversation. Thank you for taking time with us today, and would love if you could tell us a little bit about CabinetM for folks who may not be as familiar with the great work that you do.
Thanks, Megan. Sure. So CabinetM, we're a platform that helps companies manage all of the technology that they're using. And so what does that mean? It means that you can use our configurator to create a drag and drop version of your tech stack. You can map your integration links. You can click a magic button and look at your technology architecture, your data architecture. You can collaborate with everybody on your team to manage everything to do with technology, from product discovery to product retirement, strategy, your roadmaps, everything, soup to nuts, with your marketing and sales technology.
And not to mention spend, right?
And absolutely spend. Yeah, good point. Yes.
Yep. So, Anita, with that vantage point, I think the thing that's really interesting is because you have visibility across so many different organizations' tech stacks, literally as entered by them about what they've bought, what they're investing, how they're configuring and integrating, all of those good things. You've got a unique vantage point, and I'd be curious to get your thoughts on our poll and what are you seeing?
Yeah. So at the highest level, I'm seeing what you're seeing, right? I think we've seen a decrease or a hold firm this year. I think next year we'll see a decrease in budget or a hold firm, depending on the organization. But I think the drivers for that are quite complex. So the first driver is concerns about the economy, right? So, and the election has really played into that. But even post-election, I think there's still residual concerns about the economy, and so companies are, being conservative with their budgets. But it gets more complex when we get into the marketing tech stack. I will say it is a tale of two cities. We have companies that are very, very good at tracking all the details of their technology stacks, their performance, their utilization, their spend, their architecture. And what we're seeing in those companies is that there is increasing pressure from outside the marketing organization, where people, they want to know more and more information about what's happening in that tech stack. They're not people, these are finance people and management types. They're not people that care what product connects to another, but they want to understand holistically where money is being spent and the return on that investment. And they want to have a good handle on when contracts renew and why companies are using products. So we see that, and it's slowing things down a little bit, right? Because the people that do a good job are now adding to that. But on the other hand, we still have an extraordinary number of companies who do not have a record of their marketing technology. And quite honestly, they shouldn't get any more budget, because when you don't know what everybody's using, it leads to redundant products, redundant contracts, SaaS subscriptions that aren't canceled for products people aren't using, inability to talk to senior management about where the money is going and what it's returning. And I still think that is a huge, huge issue for the vast majority of organizations. And, I'm flabbergasted. And I'm not saying this just because we have the solution to manage technology. I don't care if you use a spreadsheet, if that works for you. But, in no other organization would you have a percentage of your budget, such a big percentage of your budget, anywhere from 20 to 30% of your budget allocated to a technology, and not have to justify where that spend is happening, how it's, what the return on that is. So there's that problem. And so that causes a natural friction between finance and marketing. And by the way, that makes it much easier for finance to say, take 10% out of that budget, take 25% out of that budget. So that one completely flabbergasts me. But then we're going to add in AI to the mix. And Megan, you said that, companies are wanting to introduce AI. So here's what I think. I think that should actually freeze marketing budgets right now. I think companies can experiment with generative AI, which exists independently, doesn't need to be integrated. And I see a lot of companies doing that. But when it comes to these platforms that leverage AI to do things bigger, better, faster, or deliver new capabilities like better targeting and personalization and all of this, there is no sense in making any investment if you do not have an understanding of your data architecture. So, and I will tell you, most companies don't. And if you're not working with clean data, AI has to train on good, complete data in order to produce results. So putting in a layer of technology that's enabled by, through AI with an underlying data mess is just a complete and utter recipe for disaster.
Yeah, totally agree with everything that you're saying there, from kind of the crunching of the budgets to the frustration of wanting to get more, but you can't get more, and kind of keeping that accountability, and then the quality of the data for sure. You don't want to layer AI on top of bad data. Last week we were talking, speaking of AI, we were kind of thinking through where does AI go. And last week's session, I was kind of giving an update as far as what I saw on the road the last couple of weeks, and I'd be curious about how this compares to what you're seeing. To your point of the generative AI and the experimentation at the $20 a month level or whatever the price point is at the individual level, if you can get away with that in your security policy in your company, um, I would agree with you. There's probably a lot of experimentation there. And the existing platforms that are already embedded in companies that are dropping in AI over the top. So let's say, for example, you have a Zoom Info and maybe you're testing out Copilot, or if you have Sixth Sense, you're leveraging their AI agents, their new agents that they're packaging. The incumbents, to me, seem to have an advantage because they're already there. It's that messy middle of the AI platforms that you just mentioned. In addition to the data, I don't know if the buyers are going to be there because of the pressures that you just talked about from the CFO perspective and the budget's getting crunched down so much. Like, what do you think happens in that segment of these new AI platforms? Like, will they be adopted like Martech passed? I mean, I know the promise is there, but
I
I just don't
yeah.
know what happens to that segment of AI.
So here's my take on that. I think the answer is eventually. And so if we step back, so I had the opportunity a few months ago at the Channel Marketing Association to run two roundtables on AI strategy. And so it was all these folks in marketing ops and channel marketing positions that were talking, we were talking about where they were with AI. And to your point, a lot of them were experimenting with the generative AI and things like Copilot and capabilities that had dropped in from the vendors they already had, like Adobe. But they were struggling with the ethics around AI and what do you disclose? How do you attribute content that's produced by AI, and what are the rules around that? So there's a lot of work to be sorted out there. But as I mentioned before, the data side of it, I got the best example of problematic data. There was a gentleman at my table, and for the life of me, I cannot remember his name, but I did tell him I was going to be telling this anecdote everywhere I could. But his company makes an AI chatbot. And so they were experimenting with their chatbot internally. And they learned firsthand the problem of unclean data. So they built a chatbot internally. And then depending on what and who queried the chatbot about the company's public holidays, people got different answers. And it was because in all that data that they were using it to train, they were going back 20 years. So it was looking at different holiday schedules. So if that is a teeny tiny example of the problem with not having good data or having old data, right? Because AI needs a lot of data. Oh, sorry. That was supposed to be on silent. Yeah, sorry. So that was, where was I? Oh yeah. So that is just a little fraction of the data. And so, as we talked in the group, people were looking at each other and saying, oh my God, I don't know who's going to be in charge of looking at the CRM data. Right now, that is your fundamental data for applying anything marketing related to. And not only does it have to be correct, but it has to be current, because you do not want this AI acting upon old data. So in that little middle bit that you're talking about, yes, there's going to be financial pressure, but also an inability to deploy. So even though a new vendor may have this great platform, I don't think companies are ready to deploy. And I do think so. And then this leads to bigger things, right? So here's the next piece of this. I do think this AI will potentially or definitely will change everything about marketing, how we do, what we do, the efficiency at which we work. But it's going to take, first you have to clean that data up, and then these new platforms will emerge. So next year, nobody should be investing in giant million-dollar platforms that are not on a path to AI, because that is going to be a very short-term brick wall type of investment. Because once AI gathers steam and people begrudgingly work on cleaning up their data and getting their data ready, and we have that intersection point, and I don't think it's next year, but I do think it's in the next, 3 to 5 years. We're going to see new platform leaders emerge. We've seen it at every intersection point of big technology innovation, right? The old leaders give way to the new leaders. We've seen it over and over and over again. And because the new platforms don't have any technology debt to deal with, whereas the old big behemoths do. So I think, this is not the time to invest in million-dollar platforms. This is a time to be agile and play with new things that are low cost and low impact in terms of implementation. So I think that will suppress spending as well, by the way.
Yeah, and I just added a link in the chat for folks to see. There's an interesting article that McKinsey put out on what it's saying, charting the path to the AI-driven enterprise of 2030. But what stood out to me were some very new roles around managing your data. And I think, companies who have had those kinds of roles in place for some time, there aren't that many of them, who've sort of said we need dedicated leaders who are in charge of understanding our data as a critical business asset. But I think this was kind of a nice description of the kinds of responsibilities and scope of role that those new leadership positions need to take. And I'll be interested to see how many companies adopt this quickly, because it's sort of like customer experience too. It all seems like a good idea, but when it comes time to appoint someone to be responsible for it, how much can they actually do? And how much power will they actually have? And this is kind of implying, as is what you're saying, Anita, that this becomes kind of like, the owner of the water, the water resource in an agricultural community. This is the owner of the thing that's going to feed all of the stuff that we want to do. And how do we find and empower that person? I'm curious to know, how quickly do you see companies thinking about adding roles and responsibilities that are more specific about managing and improving and providing access to data as an asset? Are you seeing that happening yet?
I think we are, but slowly. I think it's an absolute must. And I do think the one area of technology that should be very successful over the next couple of years is all the technology around data management, data cleansing, and data integrity. I think that we're going to have to bring in, this is not just going to be a people solution. It's going to be a people and technology solution.
Yeah. And when you think about those tools, what would you say if a company really hasn't invested, and in particular, if you've got a marketing organization that knows they need this, but it's not just in their purview, it's not just up to them. How would you coach a CMO to partner with their IT leaders or their CFO or whoever else needs to be involved to get the company to take this seriously soon enough to have an impact, on their tenure as a marketing leader?
Okay, so that opens up a whole nother can of worms. I think we're still in a situation where the average CMO is completely disconnected from technology. Which, I don't understand why in this day and age that is still the case, particularly with the introduction of AI, because it is the board and the executive team that are going to be looking at the CMO and saying, what is the AI strategy for the company? So, today's CMO, for the most part, are hands off. There's like a big divide between them and their technology group. They're like, just make it work. And I think that's actually irresponsible. I think today's CMO needs to understand what technology is in place, how it's architected, and they do not have to be technical. They do not have to go into the weeds. They've got great technology teams that can do all that for them. But they should be able to understand where the data sources are, how well data is flowing across all the tools that they have, how well it's being used, where the pockets of problem are, so that then they can make the case alongside this push for AI. I mean, this is the perfect time, right? The board and the executive team says we need an AI strategy for marketing. They can say, I can't do that until we've got the data under control, and we need these people and we need these tools. So this is the time. This is the time that CMOs need to get involved. And you know, all they have to do is kind of put the framework in place to get the information they need. And like I said, they don't have to get down in the weeds with any of these products, but they should understand where their data is coming from and how good that data is and whether it's getting to where it needs to be, and then the implications of technology spend.
I'm going to share a tab here. Let's see if it'll pull up here. This presentation actually from Matt Harney, via Matt Harney, it was actually presented at Pavilion, which I attended last week in Austin. Although it was a smaller scale company, it's a 54-page document talking about the impact that good data has, and it's literally the foundation of a home, right? And we look at this a lot. In fact, I was talking with a large company CMO this week about this importance too, and this person was like, not interested. It's not, you know, not really exciting, not appealing. I'm like, okay, well, you can run all the programs you want, but if you don't have the foundation in place, this document really hones in on, and I'll drop the link, but I think the link is hard to see in StreamYard here. I'll drop it in, or you can do a search on our friend Matt, who has this posted out from Kyle, but it's an excellent recap of exactly what you're sharing, Anita. And, you know, I think you said a lot of interesting things there, but one thing that really, really resonated with me is the board is going to now be coming to the CMO saying, what is our game plan around AI? And to me, I think I'm glad I'm not in that hot seat right now. I've been in that hot seat before, but I'm glad I'm not in it now, because in a way they're being asked to grow 20%, but not increase their sales and marketing budget at all, because the go-to-market is so out of whack. Do you have any, you know, I guess I'm going to put you on the hot seat here, any suggestions in that scenario of, look, I need an AI strategy. I'm being asked for an AI strategy, but I can't spend any more to get to the AI strategy. Like, what would you do there in that scenario?
Yeah, well, the first thing is to see where you can mine money out of your existing tech stack. You know, one of the things that we see over and over again is when people get serious about tracking and managing their tech stack details, they can pull money out pretty easily through redundant contracts, redundant products, and redundant functionality. That's the big one, where, you know, somebody has bought a big platform, they're using maybe 20% of it, and then they need a platform to do something else. They never look at that platform they've already got to see whether it will do what it needs, will solve that use case, and they just buy something else. And so by doing that, they can free up money. And we see it over and over and over again. You know, and it's not, you know, and it's not through lack of competence that these situations have arisen. It's through distributed purchasing with no centralized oversight, or, you know, somebody trying to move fast in response to pressure. So they've gone and bought something new. But it's really, you know, let's call 2025 the year to step back and prepare and evaluate.
There are CFOs cheering you from the background that you can't even see right now for that statement. But if it's a year to hold back on net new spend, then what are you observing that companies are doing when they are successfully leveraging the tech stack they have? So if you say, you've got to go to market with what you've got, you're not getting anything new. What would be, some tips you have from the folks in your base who are more successful than others?
Yeah, so I'll say Thomson Reuters is a great example of that. They're a customer of ours, and they are being very methodical in looking at each platform and creating kind of a to-do list for each product or platform in their tech stack. Do we expand utilization? Do we pull back? Do we replace? Do we? And they're taking a very, very disciplined and strategic approach to this, and it's starting to pay dividends for them. And their long view is this is all in preparation for the introduction of AI. They want what they've got now operating as efficiently and productively as possible. So, when I look at so they're a user of ours, and we give people. There's probably 50 to 60 fields you can fill out about the technology that's being used. Thomson Reuters probably has another 50 of line items that they track. I mean, they really, they're the gold standard for how technology, I think, is managed, and with this view towards getting ready for AI.
Are you seeing with Thomson Reuters or any large company kind of a move? And I know like TR is probably maybe a good example and a not so good example because they've gone through some rebranding with Refinitiv and some spin outs and that type of thing. But are you seeing centralization occur for kind of the either the branches of the organization, such that the centralized functions deciding on behalf of the branches, or the headquarters functions deciding on behalf? Or is it more of a decentralized, you can kind of bring your own tools within each division and just inform us? Like how are you seeing that set up?
Yeah, I think the best companies have got a hybrid approach, right? So when you're talking about these big multinationals, for example, it doesn't make sense to pull everything into a central location. It just becomes a bottleneck. So the key really is allowing some distributed purchasing, and then centralizing maybe the big platforms that are going to be used across the company, and then layering on top of that centralized oversight so that you've got, we had somebody the other day that discovered they had 20 contracts for the same product across their organization. You can't make this stuff up. I'm always, I'm not surprised anymore because we've heard it year after year. But so that, I think centralized oversight is really important. Not only because of all the things that we've talked about, but security and data compliance too. Those are two things that everybody needs to foundationally keep track of.
So, Anita, thinking about that kind of centralized oversight, what are some suggestions you have for if a company doesn't have that in place already? What steps can they take, and what role should the CMO play in getting a better handle on their tech spend?
Right. So I think the first thing that they need is an inventory, right? So I wouldn't even say anything about going down into the details to start with. If you don't have a handle on this stuff, get an inventory. So put one person in charge of gathering that inventory, and then assign roles in all the distributed organizations that are buying tech, and just get an inventory in place. Because once you have that inventory in place, before you even add details about spend and performance and all of that, you can quickly uncover, okay, we've got 8 email tools. We have 4 contracts for our marketing automation platform. You can uncover those things very quickly And that's low hanging fruit that you can quickly address. And then you're just shaving after that. You're adding more details, kind of like paint by number, coloring it all in and figuring out what's connected to what's not being used. So somebody also should be assigned to get the list from accounts payable of everything that's being paid for, by the way, to particularly on credit cards, to see, what zombie products are out there as well. So, if you do nothing else, just get that. It's easy. It's not time consuming, get that done. And it will get you so much further than where you are today. But the CMO should lead that.
Awesome. And just keeping an eye on time here. I didn't realize we're so passionate about this topic. We could probably talk for another hour on it. So last question on my side, and I'll give you an option here, a bit of an unfair question, but marketing automation was developed 15 years ago. Now you have ABM platforms. Do you have a point of view on either one of those in terms of what you're seeing with either marketing automation or ABM platforms, or both?
I really don't. Other than, here's what I will say we're seeing. Those ABM, the marketing automation platforms are still entrenched. They're still entrenched. ABM platforms get put in place alongside them. And that's why, I say this is not the time to buy a new big platform, because I think we have to wait until this new AI-enabled technology comes out and is cooked before you figure out whether it's time to let go of traditional marketing automation. But they're still very much entrenched.
Yeah, we'll definitely have a case of old habits dying hard, but I don't know. Maybe this is going to be a situation where once the change starts happening, it happens really fast. And to your point, I think there's some exciting developments happening that aren't quite at the go-to-market stage yet, but I think when they land, we'll all be in for some very positive changes. And Anita, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about this. I think a lot of companies are grappling with how to get a handle on their tech spend, but also really nervous about the fact that they're not going to get more money. And, how do you sort of navigate between those two realities? So thank you for helping us make sense of it.
Yeah, my pleasure. This was a fun conversation.
Excellent. Thank you for coming back, Anita. And each week we do this. We'll be back same time next week. If you have go-to-market questions, once again, the QR code, depending on how my camera's mirrored here, it's in the upper corner. It'll bring you right to the 300 plus videos. Like and subscribe to those videos if you got value today. Share with a friend. And if you have a specific question, feel free to ping Meg or I. We can point you in the right direction as well on those videos, so you're not leafing through all 300. But Anita, thank you again, and we will see everybody next week.
All right. My pleasure. Bye, everybody.